First and foremost, I must apologize to my faithful followers because I dropped the ball here. I know it's a couple of days that we in the midst of this trial, but we're going to jump back in there for day 160. And for my faithful followers, I will get day 159 and 158 and part 2 of 157 in there. Because at the end of this trial, I think we're going to be looking at a big movie release. And I want y'all to be able to come back and have something to, when you're watching these movies and you're trying to figure out who the characters are in the movie, you'll be able to come over here and pull up Fly High Productions and pull up the Young Thug YSL trial and figure out who those characters are in the movie.
No matter what type of severe asthma you have, Tespire can help you have fewer attacks and relieve your asthma symptoms. Tespire is an add-on treatment for people 12 and over. It is not a rescue medication. Don't take Tespire if you're allergic to it. Allergic reactions?
Well, they ad-libbing and falsifying information in the movie. Because the movie ain't going to be exactly how this trial went. They're going to exaggerate a little bit to make it a little interesting. If you ever listen to a storyteller is animated. A good storyteller is animated, and they tell lies. That's what makes their story so interesting, because they tell some unbelievable shit throughout their story. But anyway, enough of my jaw jacking. I see some heads moving here in the trial. And again, I'm going to apologize to the squad for dropping that ball these last couple of days, but we going to get it in nevertheless. Let's get started with today. Let's go. And hit the like button as you enter the building. Share this live with your favorite cousin.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started back with the testimony, I just wanted to let y'all know to disregard the witness's comment about a warrant being taken for Mr. Stillwell for drugs. Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective Belknap, you never took out any warrants for any of the drugs related to that book bag as it pertains to Shannon Stillwell, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you take out gang warrants?
I did.
And did you take out firearm and gang warrants as well on Mr. Nichols?
I did.
No further questions. Thank you, Detective Belknap.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Detective Belknap.
Morning, sir.
We've met Max Shard. I represent Mr. Stillwell. So, I first want to ask you about of Jeffrey Williams' address at 355 Allison Drive on May 9th, 2022. You were present for that search, correct?
I was.
You were one of the officers executing the search.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you didn't write a report about the execution of that search warrant, did you?
I did not.
Okay. Investigator Storno wrote a report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I have asked you to review photos taken during the execution of that search warrant, and I've also asked you to review Investigator Storno's notes, or report, correct?
That's correct.
And you were kind enough to do that for me, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent. And Mr. Atkins, if I could have your help displaying any images as Detective Belknap speaks about things, I'd appreciate it. On May 9th, 2022, do you recall who was present at 355 Allison Drive when you executed the search warrant?
Could you be more specific?
Okay. Jeffrey Williams was present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Martinez Arnold was present.
Yes, sir.
Diamante Kendrick was present.
Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Williams' teenage son was present, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. My client, Shannon Stillwell, was not present at 355 Allison Drive on May 9th, 2022, was he?
He was not.
Okay. And you don't have any evidence at all that Mr. Stillwell has ever even been to that residence, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. And during that search warrant was sought out by Investigator Viverito, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And during that search warrant, executing that search warrant on May 9th, 2022, you all collected drugs, correct? Suspected drugs?
We did.
Delta 8 syrup as well.
Yes.
Okay. Jewelry,
Yes.
money,
Yes.
phones.
Yes.
Mr. Williams' cars were seized.
That's correct.
And I'm not going to ask any questions about any of those things, but you also collected guns, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In fact, there were 6 guns collected, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And you have reviewed pictures taken during the execution of that search warrant, correct?
I did.
Okay. I would like to just talk about each gun individually. I can go in whatever order you have. If you could just tell us, do you have photos in front of you that display the different types of guns and the different guns that were collected on May 9th, 2022?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you just tell us the exhibit number of the first gun so Mr. Atkins can display it for the jury?
The first one I'm looking at is 57XX.
Okay, and that gun, from the pictures, can you tell us what type of gun, the manufacturer, anything that you can tell about that gun?
It appears to be a Glock semi-automatic handgun.
Glock semi-automatic handgun, okay. And do you have any other pictures in that sequence that reveal a serial number for that gun?
I believe so. The next one is 58XX.
Mr. Atkins, if you could display 58XX. Okay, and is the serial number BKMN536?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. What is the second gun that was collected?
The next one is 30XX.
You did say 30XX, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a close-up of that gun?
There have been so many challenges as a female entrepreneur, but fundraising is by far the hardest.
Women entrepreneurs turn out a whopping $2.7 trillion in annual revenue, yet nearly 98% of all venture capital funding goes to men.
As a small business owner and entrepreneur, a lot of times you feel like you're an island of one.
But now you have the opportunity to change this.
This program will allow me to take my business to the next level.
That would help describe what type of gun it is.
I believe it's 31XX.
Okay, 31XX. And what kind of gun is that?
It's another Glock semi-automatic handgun.
Okay. Can you tell what type projectiles or what caliber projectiles that gun fires?
It's a little difficult to tell from this picture, but from the picture alone.
Okay. Now, neither of these first two guns were the switch, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you tell us what about the next gun? What number we should display?
Oh, sir, I apologize. There's actually another photo, I believe, of that gun we were just looking at, 32XX.
All right. Mr. Atkins, if you could display 32XX. All right, thank you. And for that second gun, that's the serial number?
I believe it is, yes.
And it's BNU633.
Yes, sir.
All right. How about the third gun?
The third is 21XX.
And what can you tell us about this gun as far as the caliber, the manufacturer, or anything?
It's another semi-automatic handgun, and it appears to be a Smith & Wesson, although I can't read it on the photograph.
Okay. And is that a switch?
No, sir.
Okay. And is that the serial number? 22XX?
22XX. Yes, sir.
All right. Great. Thank you. How about the fourth gun?
The fourth is 19XX.
Okay. And what can you tell us about this gun?
And this appears to be a tan Glock semi-automatic handgun.
Okay. Is that a switch?
Does not appear to be.
The fifth gun?
That would be 15XX.
Okay. What can you tell us about this gun? Is there another picture associated with that gun?
14XX and 15XX.
14XX. Let's go with that. What can you tell us about this gun?
It's another semi-automatic handgun. Also appears to be a Smith & Wesson.
Okay. And how about the sixth gun?
This is 51, 52, and 53XX.
Now that gun, what can you tell us about that gun?
This is another Glock semi-automatic handgun, and it does appear to have a conversion switch attached to the weapon.
Okay, that is the switch.
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent. And those are the 6 guns that were collected from Jeffrey Williams' residence on May 9, 2022?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Okay, I just want to clear something up. And I'm speaking about, I'm not going to go in through individually. I'm talking about all 6 firearms. Okay. Do you have any evidence that Mr. Stillwell has ever touched any of these firearms?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have any evidence that ballistically, any of these firearms were ever used in the Shamal Drinks homicide?
I didn't conduct that follow-up investigation, so I don't know whether it was or wasn't, but I'm not aware of any evidence that it was, or any of them were.
And that includes the switch too, correct?
It does.
Okay. And do you have any evidence, ballistically or otherwise, that any of these guns were used in the January 10, 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas?
I do not.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. I appreciate that, Detective Belknap. I'm going to move to your work on March 17th. When you arrived on Meadowlark Drive, you saw...
Dependability, reliability, confidence. Everything you want in a partner. Or, it turns out, a sedan.
The white Audi, correct?
Yes, sir.
It was still in the parking lot.
It was in the driveway, yes.
Excuse me. Yes, sorry. The driveway. Still had the Maryland tags affixed to it?
It did.
Still had the tint?
I don't recall noting the tint.
Okay.
But I don't believe the car had been altered.
Okay. You don't believe the car had been altered? What do you mean by that?
I don't believe the car had been moved or processed at that time when I arrived on the scene.
Oh, okay, okay. You mentioned finding a beanie.
Yes, sir.
And that is an evidence and was just admitted through you.
Correct.
Okay. So that beanie would be a separate beanie from any beanie that was collected on March 17th at 2830 Waters Road.
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, it was collected on Meadowlark Lane.
It was collected on Meadowlark Lane.
Yes.
Okay. So if there's a separate beanie, if there's a beanie that was collected and put into evidence from Waters Road, there's 2 separate beanies, correct?
It would appear so, yes.
And the beanie that you collected on Meadowlark Drive was, well, do you know who was wearing that prior to their arrest?
Yes, sir.
And was it my client, Shannon Stillwell?
It was.
And you collected that beanie because you had viewed the BP video that Detective Hogan had showed you already, correct?
I had.
And you had noted that Mr. Stillwell was wearing a pink beanie in that BP video.
I had observed that, yes.
And that's clear video as far as videos go. It wasn't grainy, it was clear. And you saw Mr. Stillwell wearing the pink beanie.
Yes.
And that's why you collected this pink beanie, because he was, in your mind as a detective, it was important to collect that pink beanie because it matched what's in the BP video.
Well, I agree with that. Just to be clear, it was collected prior to my arrival and was given to me to transport to property.
Okay. And you made sure you put it into property?
I did.
Okay. All right. The bag of drugs, did you recover that backpack?
I did not.
Okay. Have you seen the video from the Phoenix helicopter?
I have.
Okay, and you would agree that it was Mr. Nichols that threw that book bag into those bushes, correct?
I would. Yes, sir.
All right. And prior to, from that video, you can see Mr. Nichols exiting the white Audi with that book bag.
That's correct.
Okay. In your experience as an officer, you have seen people flee from the police because they have drugs in the car, correct?
I have.
Okay. The FN Hurstel 5.7, serial number 386409184, that I believe is in evidence 221 VV. That was collected by Trooper Campbell and given to you for evidence, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you would agree that that gun is not a switch. It's not modified, not a switch.
No, it is not.
Okay. And then later, you were called by an Officer Klickner to collect an FNX 45, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And just to be clear, the FN, going back, the FN 57 shoots 5.7 rounds, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And the FNX 45 tactical shoots 45 caliber rounds.
Yes, it does.
And those are the two guns that were located at Meadowlark Drive on March 17, 2022, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you collected those firearms and brought them into property, into evidence to preserve for further investigation, correct?
I did.
Okay. Those two guns, either the 5.7 and the 45, do you have any ballistic evidence linking those guns to the January 10, 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas?
The new folding revolver by Standard Manufacturing has been officially released.
I didn't conduct any ballistics investigations on the firearms, so I don't have any ballistics evidence related to these.
Do you have any evidence that connects them to the January 10th shooting of Donovan Thomas as we see here today?
I do not.
Okay. And how about, and let me ask you, okay, and how about this? Those two guns, the 5.7 and the 45, do you have any ballistic evidence that connects those guns to the March 14, 2017 shooting of Shamel Drinks?
I don't have ballistic evidence of any kind related to these weapons.
In fact, neither the 5.7 or the 45 even shoots 40 caliber. They're not capable of shooting 40 caliber rounds, are they?
Neither is chambered to shoot a 40 caliber round.
Okay. You, just a couple more questions. You indicated that Detective Hogan had you look at the video for the FedEx to identify Mr. Stillwell and also Mr. Nichols, correct?
I reviewed the video at some point. I believe that what I initially saw were some of the social media photos of Mr. Nichols. I don't remember what I saw initially.
Did you review the BP video at some point?
At some point, yes.
Okay. This is what I want to know. Did you ever review with Detective Hogan or by yourself the FedEx video from March 14, 2017? Excuse me, March 14, 2022.
I don't recall if I ever reviewed that video or not.
Okay, so you're not even certain if you've ever seen that video?
I don't know. I'm not certain if I have or not.
Okay. All right, thank you. No further questions.
Redirect. Oh, okay. Come on in.
I know I'm surprising the court.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have met. It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir, you too.
So I have some questions about what you said today. You mentioned that to Mr. Shart that Mr. Kendrick was present in the house at Allison Drive on May 9th, 2022, correct?
I don't recall exactly what his question was, but yes.
Okay. Did you actually see Mr. Kendrick in the house?
I did not.
Okay. The 6 guns that were found in that house, in Mr. Williams' house, do you have any evidence that Mr. Kendrick was ever in possession of those 6 guns?
I do not.
Do you have any evidence that he was anywhere near those 6 guns?
I do not.
Did you take part in the inventory, possession, or transport of the jewelry that was found in Mr. Williams' home?
My role during the search was to take photographs of evidence as it was recovered.
Do you recall there being 2 Richard Mille watches in Mr. Williams' home?
I don't know if I would know those if I saw them, so I don't know if there were 2 or not.
Okay. Do you recall seeing it's a Richard Mille brand. I understand you don't know what that brand would look like, but do you recall seeing a white ceramic watch with a pink band in the jewelry that you collected, or that was collected in that home?
I believe one was. Do I remember seeing it? I certainly don't. This, a couple years later.
Okay. If a Richard Mille RM055 Bubba Watson white ceramic watch is not present in property today, do you know what happened to that watch?
I wouldn't have any idea.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Belknap, on cross, you were asked by defense counsel about the May 9th search of Jeffery Williams' home. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Now, you actually were the photographer of those crime scene photographs we walked through, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Now, you remember being asked questions about, I believe it was the 6 firearms that you found in that house.
Yes, sir.
And if they have any ballistic evidence to the March 14, 2022 murder of Chanel Drinks. Do you
Correct.
recall that?
Yes.
Now, how many months later was this search from March 14, 2022?
That'd be 2 months later.
Was Demekion Garlington arrested on May 9, 2022 at Jeffery Williams' home?
He was not.
Was Shannon Stillwell arrested on May 9, 2022 in Jeffery Williams' home?
No, he was not.
What about Miles Farley?
He was not.
What about Quarmavius Nichols?
He was not.
Now, I want to also ask you as the photographer, I'm going to publish what's marked as 64 X-ray. It's going to come up on the big screen and on your computer. Is this one of the photographs that you took?
It appears to be.
I'm going to go to 65 X-ray.
Get zero-down leases now at Bomberton Mazda in West County. Lease a 2025 Mazda CX-90 PHEV all-wheel drive, just $444 per month with zero down. Plus the Bomberton nationwide warranty, 10 years, 200,000 miles. That's at Bomberton Mazda in West County.
Is this one of the photographs that you took?
It is.
Why did you take this photograph?
In documenting this scene, we saw this pamphlet for Mr. McMiller's funeral. Mr. McMiller was associated with YSL with Mr. Williams and had been shot and killed.
What was the date that he was murdered?
It was March 11th of 2022.
And do you recall if that murder was at a house or on a highway?
It was on the highway.
Is it I don't have a pointer, but on this whiteboard, is that March 11, 2022 and I-75-85?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
And was Shamel Drinks murdered how many days after March 11th?
I believe it was 3 days later.
Now, I also want to ask you about, thank you, Mr. Vadi. You were asked on cross by defense counsel about a watch. Do you remember that?
I do.
Now, I'm just going to come out and ask you because we've been dancing around it. Did you steal any watch or know of any APD personnel who stole any item from that house?
Absolutely not.
Can you tell the jury the protocols that are in place when you document, was everyone wearing body cam?
They were.
And can you describe for the jury the process y'all have when you go through that large amount of evidence on a scene like that? In terms of, do you video when you're putting it into property?
Yes, usually our body cameras will be running during the search of the home, during the transport, and at property when submitting property.
And were you all on scene or working that case for a short time or a long time?
We were out there for several hours.
One brief moment, Your Honor. No further questions. Thank you, Detective Belknap.
All right, any recross?
You were asked on redirect if you're aware of any member of the APD that would have stolen this particular watch I asked you about, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you have full and total knowledge of all the activities of members of APD?
I don't.
If this particular watch, this Richard Mille watch, ceramic watch, is present in a photograph from Jeffrey Williams' home and it is no longer present in property right now, could anything have happened to that watch other than it have been stolen or lost?
Well, no, not every item that we photograph is ultimately taken as evidence. And I think there are probably a broad number of possibilities of what could have happened to that watch other than it being stolen or lost.
Is it the practice of your office to leave behind a $500,000 watch when you're seizing jewelry?
I don't know that I can answer that as far as practices go. I have no idea the value of this watch that we're discussing, so I'm woefully uneducated as far as that goes. And I can tell you that, unfortunately, as diligent as we are, sometimes even evidence is left behind at scenes. In this case, I don't have any specific information about this particular watch.
Can you explain to the jury the procedure when you go about seizing a vehicle, such as was seized at Jeffrey Williams' home?
When Emerson asked me to tell the story of their Black Barrel whiskey, they left out the bit where I can't actually tell it. Its secrets aren't even written down, just stored in the minds of those who know. Maybe they select distinct batches. I can't tell you which. And expertly blend them to create smooth notes of toasted oak, caramel, and vanilla spice. I can't tell you how. Well, I can tell you this. It's the greatest whiskey I ever drank and the greatest story I never did tell.
As far as the procedure, we would call a tow truck to come and tow that vehicle to another location.
Is there any searching of the vehicle and inventorying of property within that vehicle at the time of the seizure?
It can depend on the scene and if there's a search warrant for the vehicle or if the vehicle is accessible. Sometimes the keys may not be present, can't access a vehicle, and sometimes it's towed to a secure location to conduct an inventory or further processing of that vehicle.
If the vehicle is accessible at the scene and you have a warrant that allows you to enter that vehicle, what's the procedure for what you do with the contents of the vehicle?
Typically, those contents would be cataloged, valuable items may be secured, evidence may be seized.
Is the procedure to leave valuable items within the vehicle?
Not typically, and again, that could be case dependent if the vehicle is going to be removed to another secure location for further processing.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for your time. You are excused.
Thank you.
Call your next witness.
United States crime scene tech Antoinette Grant.
Antoinette Green, ANTONETTEGREEN.
And welcome back. You've been here before with us, haven't you?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to direct your attention to March 22nd, 2022. Did you have the occasion to respond to the homicide cage to assist in a homicide investigation?
Yes.
And what is the APD number, do you know now, associated with the case that you were working? Do you know the APD case number?
Not offhand, I don't.
We're looking at a copy of, did you do a report in that case?
Yes, I did.
We're looking at a copy of your report, help refresh your memory.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to approach you with what I'm going to mark as State's Exhibit 373BV. First, tell me if you recognize 373BV.
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
This is my report.
And will that help refresh your memory as to the APD case number for that case?
Yes.
What is the APD case number?
The full case number is 220731882.
And tell the juror, where's the homicide cage located?
It's located at the Annex 3493 Donnelly Hollowell.
And why were you requested to that location?
I was requested to do a follow-up with Investigator Hogan at the time.
And what did Investigator Hogan request of you?
He requested me to photograph and process 2 vehicles in the cage.
If you could tell the juror briefly, when you're asked to process a vehicle at the homicide cage, what are you going to do? How do you process the vehicle?
It depends on what the homicide or officer wants to be done, but usually in this case, I photographed the vehicle and searched for evidence.
Okay. And how many vehicles were you asked to process?
2.
And what were those 2 vehicles?
It was a Audi A5 and a Nissan Versa.
And did you have any particular order as to how you processed those vehicles?
Yes, because he had a search warrant for the Audi A5, I processed that one first.
Why did you do that one first? Just because of the search warrant?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you subsequently process the red Nissan Versa after that?
Yes.
And have you had the opportunity to look at pictures from your processing of those 2 vehicles?
Yes, I have.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 361 BV through 387 BV. Are those the photographs that you looked at previously that depict when you processed the vehicle?
Yes.
And do those appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of the homicide cage when you process both the Audi A5 and the red Nissan Versa?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time the state would like to tender and admit 361 VV through 387 VV.
Those are admitted.
Thank you. Permission to publish?
You may.
The pictures are going to come up both on this screen and on the screen.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to first start with 361 VV.
My name is Eric Crump. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana.
And while it's coming up, tell the jurors when you, let's start with 361 VV. Sorry, 373 VV, I apologize. When you process the vehicle, tell the jurors how do you go, your steps in processing a vehicle.
Okay, so my first step is to photograph of the vehicle 360. So I would do the rear, the passenger, the driver's side, and the front of the vehicle. And then from there, I would go inside of the vehicle and photograph it as well, starting with the driver's side, going to the rear, driver rear, going around to the passenger rear, and then back to the passenger front. That's how I process the vehicle.
Okay. Now, looking at Exhibit 373 VV, is this the white Audi A5?
Yes, it is.
And what is the tag number on this vehicle?
Number 8 is in Edward, D is in David, number 7071.
And what is the tag number? I mean, where's the state issuing the license?
Maryland.
Okay. And in looking at State's Exhibit 373 VV, Do you see tents on the front dashboard of the vehicle?
Well, yes, it is dark.
Okay. And can you, looking at this picture, look and see inside of that vehicle?
No, I cannot.
I want to look at 374 VV, 375 VV, and 376 VV. Is that what you were just referencing by taking the 360 picture of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And looking at those pictures, 374, 375, and 376, did the car appear to have tents on all sides of the vehicle?
Yes.
And in looking at all sides of the vehicle, were you able to look inside of that vehicle?
No.
Not through the windows?
No.
All right. I want to look at 377 VV, 378 VV, 379 VV, 380 VV, and 381 VV. What were you depicting in those exhibits?
Like I had stated earlier, those are the interior photos of the vehicle from all sides. And just showing what's in the vehicle.
And looking at 382 VV, what, if anything, were you trying to depict in 382?
That's just showing me, I always show all the photos are not here, but I always show like opening that door in the interior side of the door.
And there's, looking at 384 VV, excuse me, 385 VV. What were you depicting in 385 VV?
All right, this is a cell phone that was collected from the center console, and so I have marked it with marker number 2.
Okay, and I want to zoom in. Do you also see a pair of glasses on the seat?
Yes.
As well. All right. Did you collect the glasses or the phone charger?
No, just the phone.
All right. And then looking at 386 VV, and I'm going to rotate it to the left. If we can. But if not, what is depicted in 386 VV?
That is the inside roof headliner that I was requested to collect.
And who requested that you collected the headliner?
Investigator Hogan.
All right. And did you ultimately take or cut out that headliner?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Stacy to the 388 VV. Tell me if you recognize 388 VV.
Yes.
And how do you recognize 388 VV?
This is the bag that I collected the liner in.
Okay. And once you collected the liner, what, if anything, did you do with it after packaging it?
I was requested to send it to the GBI for gunshot residue.
And then 387 VV, what are we, is that the VIN number? Oh, sorry. Okay. And now looking at it right side up, is that the headliner that is in that bag?
Yeah.
And what portion did you cut out? Just the part that has the one?
Yes.
All right. Why did you take the other portions of the headliner?
Because that's a molded part and it was not easily to come out. That part is padded because it's part of the sunroof, so that was easy to cut.
And while I'm getting you a pair of scissors, I'm going to go to 387 VV. Was that just the VIN number of the vehicle?
Yes, it is.
Introducing the all-new Buick Enclave. Experience effortless driving that invites you to let go.
Are the last 8 digits. Excuse me, 6 digits, I apologize.
04529. I'm sorry, 04529.
All right, thank you. I'm going to hand you a pair of scissors, or you can just open up State Exhibit 388 BB and publish. Did I admit that? Let me admit first 388 BB into evidence.
No, you did not. All right, that's admitted.
And permission to publish.
You may.
And when you take it out, did you do all the other cutting here, or do you know when all the other cutting was done?
No, I do not.
Okay. And you can put it back in there. Thank you. Thank you. Next one will go Stacy Exhibit 361 VV. And is this the red Nissan Versa that you processed at the direction of Detective Holden?
Yes.
And as we go through, looking at 362 VV and looking at 363 VV, is this again you taking the 360 photographs of the vehicle?
Yes, it is.
All right. Now, for the Nissan Versa, were you able to enter into the vehicle on the on the passenger side?
No, I was not.
Why not?
Because as in our homicide cage, we have other vehicles, and if you can look to the right of that, it's another vehicle that's obstructing me from opening the passenger side doors of that vehicle. So I only stayed on the driver's side.
Okay. I want to look at or move to 367 VV. And looking at 367 VV, what were you depicting in 367 VV?
This is just showing the overall interior of the vehicle in the front.
Okay. And looking in the driver's side of 367 VV, what, if anything, is this reddish brown staining?
Yeah, those are reddish brown stains in the seat.
All right. And then looking at 368 VV, what were you depicting at 368 VV?
All right. As I was saying, I couldn't get to the passenger side door, so that is just a overall of the passenger side door. It does have some type of defect or damage in it.
And looking at 368 VV, what is the defect or damage that you're referencing?
It's the small in the interior door, the little white slit in there. That's what I was trying to photograph.
And 369 VV, is that a close-up of that white slit?
Yes.
Okay. Now looking at 371 VV, what were you depicting in 371 VV?
In the reddish brown stains, there is a projectile that's located, so that is marked with marker number 1.
Okay. And I want to see if we can zoom in on 371 VV. And is it the copper item with some white material around it that you were looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And is that where it was found, right where you had that one?
Yes.
Right. Now, looking at 372 VV.
There he is. It's right there.
Did you take it from where it was initially and pull it out a little further to take the picture of it?
Yes, so you can clearly see what it was.
Okay. And did you collect that projectile?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 389 VV. I believe admitted as 389 VV. Can you look at 389 VV and tell me if you recognize 389 VV?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
This is the bag that I sealed it in and has my initials on.
Okay. And I won't ask you the publisher, but do you feel inside of the bag the projectile?
Well, yeah, I filled the envelope that it was in.
Still to the bottom corner.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Okay.
And do you want to open it and confirm?
You want me to open it?
And just look inside of it. And once you collected the projectile, what did you do with it?
I also sent it to the GBI crime lab for testing.
After you processed both these vehicles and collected both the headliner and the projectile and sent both those items to the GBI, did that conclude your involvement in this case?
Yes.
Course indulgence for a moment. No further questions, Your Honor. Cross.
Yeah, if you could just, if you could just put them up there. I'm sorry, thank you, Sarah. Just going to put these here in case I need to ask any questions.
Okay.
Mr. Atkins, could you just write if I need anything for, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Crime scene tech, you're still a crime scene tech, correct?
Well, I'm currently a supervisor, but yeah, it's.
Good morning, Supervisor Green.
Yes.
My name is Max Shard. I represent Shannon Stillwell. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, the work that you just testified to, you performed that work on March 22nd, 2022.
Yes.
Okay. At the annex on Bankhead Highway on Donnelly Hollowell that APD owns and stores vehicles that are evidence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were not at the scene on March 14th of 2022, but you became involved when you processed these vehicles.
That's correct.
All right. And you processed these vehicles, was that pursuant to a search warrant?
Yes.
Okay. And the search warrant was obtained by Detective Hogan, is that correct?
Yes.
Who you knew to be the lead investigator in this case?
Well, investigate, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, when you were processing these vehicles, you were looking for any projectiles, correct?
Yes.
Any shell casings?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're going to get to the projectiles in a second. Shell casings, spent shell casings. You did not find any shell casings in the white Audi, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
No shell casings, okay. You were looking, obviously, for weapons.
Yes.
You didn't find any weapons in the white Audi, did you?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct, you did not.
I did not find anything.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you were also, as part of the execution of the search warrant, you were looking for materials or objects that could later be tested for gunshot residue, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So the white Audi, you collected a cell phone from the center console, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also removed the headliner, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's just talk about the removal of the headliner. Brief indulgence, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard I was approved by One Main, I was very relieved. I was ecstatic. I just felt like a ton of weight was lifted off my shoulders.
It's big, it's back, and it's only $6. Get the big box y'all love today. And this holiday season, you can order a Cajun-style turkey at your local Popeyes.
Love that chicken from Popeyes.
Okay. As part of a crime, as a crime scene technician with the city of Atlanta, certainly now as a supervisor, you are trained in evidence collection, correct?
Yes.
And forensics, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you are trained in gunshot residue, what it is, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you know it to be microscopic particles that are expelled from a handgun when the gun is fired, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And it spreads in the immediate area of wherever that gun is fired.
Yes.
Okay. And you were trained in the collection of potential objects for testing for gunshot residue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In this case, you collected the headliner from this white Audi.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm showing you 183 VV. This is already in evidence. Is this a fair representation of what the white Audi looked like after you collected the headliner?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the part that you collected, is it the square on top where the sunroof is, or is it also the surrounding area that forms the border on the top of the car?
Yeah. It's been so long. Yeah. So I'm assuming that I did that where I put number 1. I collected that, and if the other parts came off, I collected that as well.
Okay. So you collected it all.
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to look at the headliner to just confirm?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, yes, all the headliner. Yes.
And so you would agree that it includes the part that was under the sunroof as well as the surrounding areas?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now, the decision to collect the headliner of all places in the car, you're saying that decision was made by Investigator Hogan?
That is correct.
Correct? Is this the first time you've collected a headliner?
Actually, yes, that was my very first time collecting a headliner.
Okay. Now, when Detective Hogan requested that you collect the headliner, did you object at all to collecting the headliner?
No.
Okay, as someone trained in gunshot residue and collection and all that you know about gunshot residue, the headliner seemed like a reasonable part of the car to collect
Well, that's what he requested to collect. He's the lead, so I'm under his direction.
And that seemed reasonable to you, though, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't think it was crazy for Detective Hogan to ask you to collect the headliner?
No.
Okay. And the headliner would be, the reason you didn't think it was crazy, because the headliner would be in the area where gunshot residue would be dispersed if a gun was shot inside that Audi, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the headliner and that cloth is different than hands, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, the cloth material, based on your training experience, would be more likely to collect and maintain gunshot residue particles than someone's hands, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that seemed like a good idea to you to collect the headliner,
Yes.
if we wanted to get to the truth.
Yes.
Okay. And after you collected this headliner, you packaged it carefully, correct?
Yes.
In accordance with all the training and experience and guidelines that you follow in the collection of evidence.
Yes.
And you submitted it to GBI, correct?
That is correct.
And GBI being the Georgia Bureau of Investigations.
Yes.
Okay. And it would be someone from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations that I would have to talk to about whether, what the results of that gunshot residue testing is, correct?
That is correct. You have to talk to them.
All right.
I noticed these everywhere.
Yep, Schnucks has great low prices on things you buy the most. Low prices every day.
Oh, one more thing. In your, Mr. Atkins, could you kindly publish 374 VV? Or, sorry, Mr. Abate, Ms. Hilton, thank you. $374. Thank you. Ms. Green, this is a picture that you took of the outside of the white Audi, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you noted that there was tint on the windows and the front and back windshield, correct?
Yes.
All right. From your inspection of this car, did you notice any damage to the tint of the front driver's side window?
No.
Did you notice any bubbling or scratches on the tint of the driver's side window?
No, I did not.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Weinstein?
No,
Any redirect? No redirect. All right. Thank you for your time, and you are excused. Call your next witness.
Number 6, Alexander Coleman, 16.
My name is Alexander Colvin. Last name is C-O-V as in Victor, I-N.
And good morning, Mr. Colvin. How are you?
Good morning.
Where are you employed?
I'm currently employed at the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, Division of Forensic Sciences, commonly known as the State Crime Lab.
And what do you do for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations?
I am a microanalyst or scientist in the trace evidence section.
And if you can tell the jury about your education and training.
I received a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Albany State University. And upon being hired at the GBI Crime Lab, depending on which area of analysis they will be employing you in, you will begin a training program. So for me, when I was promoted to a scientist position, I started off in the gunshot primer residue program, and the training lasts about 6 to 8 months, was consistent of practical exercises, written and oral exams, a competency test at the end, which is like a mock case that I had to get the correct answer to, a mock trial phase, and then about a 3-month-long supervised casework phase where I was doing real casework, but my trainer was also going through some of the technical processes with me.
And have you had any training outside of your training with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations?
As it pertains to gunshot primer residue, no, I have not.
While at the GBI, how many cases have you dealt with concerning gunshot residue?
Concerning gunshot residue, over 1,000 at this point.
And have you ever been qualified to testify in the state of Georgia as an expert in gunshot residue?
Yes, I have.
About how many times?
About 82 or so times.
You're right. This time the state would like to tender Mr. Colvin as an expert in gunshot residue and trace evidence examination.
Dear Dr. Ng, my missing teeth isolated me from the world. I trusted Clear Choice, and you gave me back my smile and my confidence in one day. Thank you.
You're welcome. You deserve it.
Get the smile you want from the #1 provider of fixed full-arch dental implants in the U.S. Schedule a free consultation.
AI is changing the world around us, and the complex world of software.
So qualified and may testify as an expert in those matters.
If you could tell the jurors as a microanalyst, what are some of your job duties and responsibilities?
So as a microanalyst in the trace evidence section, I perform casework in the areas of gunshot primer residue, or GSR, paints and coatings, plastics and polymers, or tape, fractured materials, and some questioned materials or general materials cases.
And if you could tell the jurors, what is gunshot residue and how is it formed?
Gunshot primer residue, or GSR, is a collection of microscopic particles that are formed when a firearm is discharged. These particles contain all 3 of the elements, lead, barium, and antimony, and are molten in morphology, showing that they've been exposed to a lot of heat and pressure during the discharging of that firearm.
And when the gunshot residue or the gunshot powder comes out of the firearm, what direction does it generally go in? What happens with?
The GSR particles form a vapor cloud when the firearm is discharged. So I liken it to maybe baby powder in the way it behaves, kind of a cloud or a plume around that firearm in all directions. And then also some of that GSR, the GSR particles traveling with the bullet as well.
How do you test for GSR on items or materials?
Typically, GSR is tested and collected using what we call a GSR collection kit. And these kits contain vials with what we call stubs. They're adhesive samplers, 1/2 inch in diameter metal discs with black carbon adhesive tape on the top. And whatever surface you want to examine for GSR, whether it be a person's hands or clothing or so on and so forth, you can take those samplers and dab the surface randomly to pick up any particulate matter that is there. And then once those samplers are submitted to us, we will input them into an instrument that's called a scanning electron microscope that is equipped with an energy dispersive X-ray spectrometer, or SEM-EDS for short. And all that is just a very high-powered microscope that uses a beam of electrons instead of light, like you would usually see in a microscope that you would see in a biology classroom. This instrument will then allow us to see what's on the surface of those samplers. Any particulate matter that is there, we can see it, and then get an elemental profile of what those particles are made of. So again, with GSR, we're looking for molten particles containing all three of the elements together: lead, barium, and antimony.
Are there certain surfaces that are better to test for GSR than others?
Yes, there are. As far as like, so typically the best evidence as far as GSR is concerned is a person's hands. You can also sample surfaces such as clothing items or anything that's made of cloth or textile material. Any other surfaces can be sampled for GSR, but some surfaces don't do as well as retaining those GSR particles, and as well as making it difficult to actually sample. But any surface can technically be sampled for GSR.
And if a surface is clean, so if it's your hands, if the hands are washed, or if it's a vehicle and the vehicle is cleaned, would that prevent you from getting GSR results in cases such as that? Or can it affect getting results?
Can you get closer to the mic?
Yes.
Thanks.
When it comes to a person's hands, if GSR particles are in fact there, washing the hands will cause you to remove most, if not all, of those GSR particles. The same can be generally said with other surfaces, especially harder surfaces. If you wipe those down or rinse those down, any GSR particles that are potentially there mostly will be lost. When it comes to clothing items or surfaces that are more cloth or textile material, most of those GSR particles, if they are in fact there, will also be lost. But we have seen that, for example, with clothing items, very small amounts of GSR can still persist even after washing your clothes.
And in a vehicle, are there certain places that as a scientist with the GBI, that you ask law enforcement to get samples of for you to test? Are there other parts of a car that are better to test for GSR than others?
We would prefer that the headliner of a vehicle is either submitted or sampled for GSR. Again, all surfaces can be sampled for GSR inside of a vehicle, but some surfaces, the harder surfaces, just don't do as well as retaining those particles. So things such as a gear shifter or the steering wheel may not be good surfaces to sample for GSR, even though it's possible. But the headliner, maybe the headrests of the seats would be your best areas to sample for GSR.
I want to direct your attention to DOFS case number 2022-1007212, were you asked to perform any testing in that case?
Yes, I was.
And who was the agency that submitted the request?
Go bold in a new 2025 Kia K4. The K4 stands out with unmistakable attitude and track-inspired available turbocharged performance. Comfortably bring along family and friends with its spacious interior.
Your Honor, may I look at my notes?
You may, if they'll help refresh your recollection.
Yes. Will they help refresh your recollection?
Yes, they will.
All right.
And I'm sorry, it was which officer?
Which agency?
Agency, the Atlanta Police Department.
And what was the agency reference number?
The agency reference number was 2207-31882.
And who requested the testing to be done?
An investigator, A.E. Hogan.
And was there a named victim on that case?
Yes, there was.
And who was that?
Mr. Shamel Drinks.
And what was submitted to the GBI for testing?
So as far as GSR analysis is concerned, a headliner that is identified as being collected from an Audi A5 was submitted.
Okay. And in front of you is State's Exhibit 388 BV. And there's some fresh gloves. Tell me if you recognize State's Exhibit 388 BV.
Okay, so this is item number 1, which is containing the headliner from the Audi A5. And I recognize it by the GBI specific barcode here with the GBI case number and item number of this particular package. I also recognize this package by the seals where I initialed the seals here when I completed the analysis, and my initials and date when I started the analysis.
And can you walk the jury through what you did with that particular piece of evidence in order to test for GSR?
Okay, so once I am assigned this particular case, I will then go and retrieve this item of evidence out of the trace evidence evidence storage location, and then begin my analysis for GSR. So for this particular case, I was tasked with actually sampling the headliner before beginning my examination. And so I took this item of evidence into a clean processing room and began sampling this headliner using those stubs or adhesive samplers that I mentioned earlier.
And when you look inside 388 BV, do you see the adhesive stubs that you use in this case?
The adhesive stubs are not here unless they've been put inside. Oh, they're inside actually. So the adhesive stubs are a separate item that I created once I was finished sampling the headliner.
And when you say you sampled the headliner, what do you mean?
I will take the adhesive samplers and we call it dab randomly across the surface of that headliner. I used 2 stubs in total when it came to actually sampling the surface of the headliner. Keep in mind this is a sampling process. Not every square millimeter of that entire headliner can be covered by these stubs. So like I mentioned, I used 2 of these stubs, and then a third stub, which was just exposed to the collection environment in the processing room that I did the sampling in, just to show that there's no extraneous GSR particles in the processing room. That will also be carried along through the examination process along with the stubs that I used to sample the actual headliner.
And is there any reason why you didn't sample or take every piece of the headliner and test every piece of it? It's a large surface area, and it is not efficient to be able to, I guess, get a representative sample of the entire surface area. But, per policy for us, it is up to the examiner's discretion. Whenever the tack or the adhesive, the stickiness is lost on those samplers, you can either stop there with your sampling or use another
adhesive sampler to continue sampling. And for me, I used 2 stubs for this particular headliner.
And what was the results of your testing?
The samples from the headliner, from the Audi A5, failed to reveal any particles that are characteristic of GSR.
Now, since you only tested a sample of the headliner, is it possible that there could have been GSR on the portion that you did not sample or that you did not stub?
It is possible that there is a small amount of GSR somewhere on that headliner that I happened to miss with the sampling process.
Now, I want to ask you a few hypotheticals. If a person is driving a car and they pull up to a red light, and at that red light, the same driver, I'm going to ask first, sticks their hands outside of the window, and they fire a .40 caliber handgun, would you expect gunshot residue to enter into the car that the driver was in?
And it is the driver that stuck the...
Yes, the driver is the person who stuck their hands outside of the window and fired the firearm.
It's possible that a small amount of GSR could still be deposited inside the vehicle through that open window or door, perhaps, but not particularly a large amount of GSR. Most of that cloud or plume of GSR particles would be outside of the vehicle, but some of that still could be deposited inside as well.
Now, hypothetically, if a person...
Ms. Hilton, if you're going to get that far away from the mic, will you use the lapel mic or pick one up and carry it with you, please?
Sure, I'll stay by the mic, Your Honor. Hypothetically, is this good? Can you hear me? Okay. Hypothetically, if a person is driving a vehicle and they have passengers in that vehicle, and for some reason they're in the same car, the passenger shoots a gun inside of the car, inside of the same car, would you expect to find GSR inside of that vehicle?
Yes, if the gun is discharged within the cabin of that vehicle, I would expect to find GSR inside of that vehicle.
Would you expect to find more GSR in that vehicle where the gun was shot in the cabin more than the gun that was shot outside of the window of the driver's side?
Yes, it is reasonable to expect that more GSR particles will be found in the vehicle where the firearm was discharged inside of the vehicle versus the vehicle where the firearm was discharged outside of the window of the vehicle.
And in this case, outside of testing the headliner, do you know anything about where that headliner came from? Outside of knowing that it came from an Audi A5, do you know anything else about that vehicle?
No, I do not.
Court's indulgence for a moment. My last question for now. Do the conditions in which a vehicle is stored affect whether or not you'll be able to find GSR? So for example, if the gun is fired outside of a vehicle and the windows remain down, or the sunroof is opened, or the sunroof is opened and closed multiple times, does that at all affect whether or not you will find GSR inside of the car?
If the GSR particles are already deposited inside of the vehicle, I suppose it's possible that you would lose a small amount if the windows are down or the sunroof is open, just based on wind or maybe if it rained or something like that. But I wouldn't expect for there to be a huge difference based off of that alone.
Thank you so much. No further questions. All right.
Mr. Coven, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Max Shard. I represent Shannon Stillwell. I appreciate you being here today. I'm going to ask you, let's play the hypotheticals first, and then I'm going to get into the work you actually did in this case, okay?
Okay.
All right. So you were just asked about some hypotheticals. Let's just be clear. In your expert opinion, if a gun was shot inside the cabin of a car and the sunroof was opened subsequently to the gunfire and the windows were opened and someone was driving around, in your expert opinion, the gunshot residue inside that car would remain, correct?
And this is after the gun was already discharged and the GSR was deposited?
Yes.
Yes, I would expect for there to be surfaces inside of that vehicle where the GSR particles remained, yes.
Okay, you were asked about a hypothetical where someone sticks their hand out the window. The driver sticks their hand out the window and shoots. Okay, first of all, there's a possibility that there would still be gunshot residue inside the cabin.
Insure, invest, protect. Mutual of Omaha. Protect your kingdom.
Hey, you know why I'm here, and you know what this is all about. It's the Emirates NBA Cup.
So, how does this thing work?
In that circumstance, correct?
That is correct.
Because it's a large plume of microscopic particles. How many particles are there typically? Gunshot residue particles discharged from a gun when it is fired?
We don't have a very accurate count on that for sure, because that's very difficult to count. But I would expect on the order of hundreds, at the very least, to be created when a firearm is discharged. Now, where those particles are deposited, that's a different story.
Could it be thousands?
It could be thousands. I can't say for sure. It's all dependent on how many shots we're talking about and how large the caliber of the firearm was.
And let me ask you this. So 3 to 4 shots fired. Outside the car, inside the car, either way. That would increase the amount of particles that are expelled from the firearm 3 to 4 times, correct?
Yes, it would, yes.
That would make it more likely, even if a gun is shot outside a window, that there would be gunshot residue within the cabin that could be detected by you later on, correct?
Yes, that is reasonable to expect that there will be more available to deposit on some surface somewhere, yes.
Okay, and while we're playing the hypothetical, if someone stuck their arm out the window, the driver's side window of a car, and fired a gun, and it was on video, you would expect to see muzzle flashes, wouldn't you?
On video?
Yes.
That's reasonable to expect. That's, yes, with a gunfire, with a discharging firearm, yes.
You familiar with tint application?
A little bit,
You're not
yes.
supposed to down the window within 24 to 48 hours after the tint is applied, correct?
That is what I've been told before, yes.
Leads to bubbling, leads to damage to the tint.
That's correct.
Okay? If a car is collected that had recently had tint applied and there was no, within hours of this alleged shooting, and then there was no damage to that tint when it was later, when the car was later processed, would that be evidence that the window was never opened to shoot out at someone?
That is outside of my expertise. I'm not a window tint expert. I know I've been told that as well before with my own vehicle, but I cannot say for sure that that is the case here.
Well, while we were doing hypotheticals, I just wanted to ask that as well. Okay. But ultimately, getting back to the work you actually did, not hypotheticals. You've done with GBI, how long have you been working with GBI?
Over 9.5 years now.
Okay, excellent. You've done thousands of tests for gunshot residue, correct?
Just over 1,000, yes.
Just over 1,000. You've tested headliners before, correct?
Yes, I have.
This isn't the first time.
No, it's not.
Okay, headliners are a relatively common part of a car to be collected to test for gunshot residue, correct?
To either be collected or someone has sampled a headliner and submitted it to us, yes.
And the reason is because the headliner, where it's situated in the car, would be a place where the gunshot residue, if the gun is fired in the car or even potentially outside the car, would be a place where gunshot residue would be deposited, correct?
That is correct. A good area for them to be retained if they were indeed deposited.
And you said retained. Retained, also, the headliners, they're a cloth fabric, correct?
That's correct.
Textiles.
Typically.
Textiles,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Different than a hand where you sweat and different things of that nature. These textiles tend to maintain and absorb absorb's a bad word, maintain the gunshot residue particles better than skin, for instance.
That's correct. Any item that's of cloth material or textile has the ability to hold on to or retain GSR particles better than a harder surface or better than a person's hands, simply due to the fact that we use our hands a lot. The more you're touching surfaces, you're going to lose those particles, or just washing your hands will cause you to lose all of those particles.
Okay. And in your work on this case, you took the headliner and you dabbed it with those sticky tabs, correct?
That's correct.
You did everything by the procedures as you were taught, correct?
That is correct.
You did everything by the procedures as is standing operating procedure with GBI, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And in fact, you used that one tab, and then in fact, you broke out a second tab and continued to dab the headliner, correct?
That is correct.
How many dabs do you do with each tab?
Again, per our policy and our standards, we are to, and it's at the discretion of the examiner, but we will continue to dab until the tackiness or the stickiness of that adhesive surface is lost. And at that point, then you can move on to a second stub or third or however many there were, or be finished with your sampling process. So in this particular case, I can't really tell you for sure how many dabs that was. Maybe a couple dozen or more than that, but I can't tell you for sure. We don't notate how many dabs there were.
All right. And you said that.
Go bold in a new 2025 Kia K4. The K4 stands out with unmistakable attitude and track-inspired available turbocharged performance. Comfortably bring along family and friends with its spacious interior loaded with premium amenities, plus feel in control of your drive with advanced driver assistance technology. Click now to view our inventory.
All right, NDI November, our 5th year. I can't believe it. We have all kinds of great programming all month with customer and user stories about NDI. And then November 12th through 14th, we have 3 days of intensive programming. Sign up at ndinovember.com for it. Day 1, our kickoff. A look at NDI technology today and how to best use AV over IP in production. Day 2, infrastructure show. Optimizing your network for NDI with special guests from Netgear. Day 3, 2024 and beyond, the future of NDI and video over IP. Join NDI November experts to discuss the future of NDI and remote production. And of course, we've got prizes from PTZ Optics, VizRT, and Bird Dog. Looking forward, see you in November. Sign up at ndinovember.com.
Just dabbing, you probably didn't cover the entire surface of the headliner, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but the reality is you don't need to effectively test for gunshot residue, correct?
That is correct. Again, unfortunately, just due to the nature of the sampling process, we can't get to every square millimeter of that entire surface. So it's possible that some things could have been missed, but this is a sampling process that is recognized throughout the forensic community and is standard for us when it comes to sampling any items for GSR.
Well, and reality is, when we're talking about GSR, a gun doesn't disperse GSR to one little spot, all the GSR to one little spot on a headliner. It sends a plume, correct?
That's correct, a plume or a cloud, yes.
And so when you're saying we didn't cover every little spot, in your training experience using, in fact, not only one tab, but two tabs and dozens of dabs, in your 9.5 years experience, you dabbed enough to get an accurate representation of whether that headliner was exposed to a plume of gunshot residue, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You felt great about the work you did. You followed all the procedures.
Yes, I did feel good about the sampling process that I did.
Okay. Let me ask you, you've said you've been called to testify 82 times.
When it comes to GSR, yes.
Is it fair to say that the majority of those times you came to testify in court, the GSR was positive?
To the majority of the time? Potentially. Potentially.
Okay. Has the state called you personally as an expert in gunshot residue at times when the result was positive?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And when the result was positive, you came and shared with the jury about what the results were?
That is correct.
And it was the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, just be clear, Fulton County District Attorney's Office has called you to testify about positive results before, correct?
Objection on relevance?
Overruled. You can answer.
I cannot say for sure, remembering my results from testifying in Fulton County, but it is reasonable to expect that there were some that were positive, and I was asked to testify to my results for them here, yes.
Okay. So when the results were positive, the work was done well according to the prosecutors?
I can't really speak to...
Sustained.
Okay. All right, now, I want to ask you, going back to another hypothetical that I left out. The hypothetical of washing. Hypothetically, you can wash your hands, correct?
That is correct.
And that can remove gunshot residue.
Correct.
And you've talked about clothing and textiles and the potential to wash textiles or clothing, correct?
That's correct.
And you also said that there's studies that show even textiles or clothing, even if they go through the wash, still have gunshot residue, correct?
That is correct.
All right, but here's the thing. I want to talk about this case. Do you have any evidence, is there any evidence that you noted in your report, any evidence that this headliner had been washed?
There's no evidence that was noted or given to me that would indicate that it had been washed, but I would never really know for sure. Based off of what I am given to examine for the GSR analysis.
Well, I want to talk about the premise of the hypothetical. You do not have any evidence that this headliner was washed?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right, and ultimately, the results, well, we talked about hundreds or thousands, or you said maybe thousands, of particles. What is the threshold? I know that you said it's negative. The headliner was on each and every one of those tabs. When you looked under the scanning electron microscope with the beams, the electron beams, the result was negative. But what I want to know, what is the threshold?
With Asana, AI teammates can help level up your goals by connecting.
For a positive?
We don't really use the word positive. It's just, is the GSR there or not? And all you need is just one particle to say that, yes, there are particles characteristic of GSR present on this surface.
So all you need is one particle under that scanning electron microscope with the electron beams to be a positive result.
That is correct.
And in this case, the result of that headliner was negative, meaning you did not even see one particle of gunshot residue on that headliner.
That is correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Mr. Shar just asked you if there was evidence that the car was washed. Do you know, sitting here, if there's evidence that it was not washed or cleaned?
No, I do not.
Mr. Shar asked you about muzzle flashing on a video. Do you remember him asking about that?
Yes.
If the video is grainy, would you expect to see muzzle flash?
I really can't tell you for sure without actually seeing the video myself. I suppose the graininess of a video could impact that, but I can't say for sure.
And just because you don't see muzzle flash, does that mean a shooting did not occur?
I'm not really too sure on that one either.
You talked about a plume, the smoke or the cloud that comes out. The direction of the cloud, is that in the direction of the projectile of the bullet? Is that the direction of the plume that we are talking of?
So the plume or cloud is formed around the discharging firearm. Yes, the plume could have a more dense population of GSR particles in certain areas, depending on the environmental factors or what type of firearm it was. But it is a cloud or a plume of GSR particles that is created. And then you will also have some GSR particles traveling in the direction of the bullet, with the bullet itself.
Can the length of time between the depositing of the GSR and the testing affect whether or not you will find GSR?
Yes, it can, just due to any factors or any events that could have occurred in the interim. So those GSR particles are deposited. Were they washed or wiped away or lost for whatever environmental reasons? That could affect the amount of GSR particles that are picked up when when it's finally sampled for GSR. Of course, I can't say for sure what happened, but those are things that can affect any GSR examination, yes.
And do you have in your notes when you tested the headliner?
I sampled the headliner on June 1st, 2022.
All right. And again, cleaning, vacuuming inside of a car, inside of a vehicle, that can affect whether or not we find GSR. Is that fair?
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, that will affect the amount of GSR particles that are there.
So now we're dealing with a hypothetical about vacuuming. Do you have any evidence that this headliner was vacuumed?
No, I do not.
Okay. And when I understand that you collected the samples on June 1st, 2022?
That's correct.
When did you receive the headliner from APD?
APD submitted the headliner on March 23rd, 2022.
Okay, between March 23rd, may I approach?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the headliner?
Yes.
Okay, between March 23rd and June 1st, did the headliner...
3, 2, 1, it's a showdown. Yeah, I do 2 and 24, staying ready for 'em. They ain't really ready for 'em. Man, I'm steady with the torch, that's why I give 'em plenty more.
Your hairstylist is flexible. Your barista is flexible too. The yoga lady might be too flexible. But where can you find flexibility when it comes to getting name brand products for your home? How about Aaron's? Aaron's has all kind of payment options for the furniture, appliances, and tech you want, with flexible rent-to-own plans. Pay monthly or pay weekly with Easy Pay. Whether you're shopping online or in store, it's the flexible way to shop for the products you need. Aaron's. Easy, beautiful, affordable.
Was it continuously, uninterruptedly kept in this evidence bag?
Based on the notes that I have and the records that I have, yes, it was.
And this evidence bag was sealed?
Yes, it was.
So no one from GBI took this headliner between March 23rd and June 1st and slipped it in the laundry?
No, they did not.
No one took the headliner and went out on Panthersville Road and ran in the yard with the headliner, just waving it around?
That's correct. No, they did not.
Okay, it was maintained in this sealed evidence bag?
Yes, it was.
Just like all other evidence that is brought in to GBI for testing, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you for your time. You are excused. Helen Schultz, next witness.
Thank you.
It's relatively short, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and call another witness before lunch.
Your Honor, the state calls Investigator Kilgore to the stand.
It's Investigator Jennings Kilgore, Jennings Kilgore.
Welcome back, Investigator Kilgore. How are you doing, sir?
Good, sir. How are you?
Doing well. When you had testified previously, you explained that you work for the APD Crime Lab?
Yes.
And discussed NIBIN?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you about some additional NIBIN testing that you performed.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you if you analyzed any NIBIN 9mm cartridge cases related to March 2022 in this case.
Which case number is that?
So I'm going to start with APD case number 220841-701.
Okay. Yes, on that particular case, we received 15 9mm cartridge cases, 140 cartridge case, and a metal jacket fragment.
Now, with that case, when did you get those items?
We received those on March the 30th, 2022.
And after you received those, did you submit them into the NIBIN system?
We did.
What did you get, if any, as any results?
On those particular 9mm cartridge cases, we came up with 4 potential leads to other cases in the system.
And when you get leads, do you yourself keep like an Excel spreadsheet of a NIBIN lead?
Yes, we have an Excel spreadsheet with the numbers of the total number of NIBIN leads that we have found at the lab to date.
Yes.
Go bold in a new 2020.
Now, Investigator Kilgore, did you ever have, with the case number we just discussed, a NIBIN lead for a case, an APD case number ending in 00312?
Yes, we did.
And you see that whiteboard to your right shoulder? Yes. Is that top case number 2207-00312 one of the NIBIN leads?
Yes, it is.
And, Your Honor, subject to stipulation by the parties, this is related to the March 11, 2022 murder of Darius Ford and Christian McMiller. Now, Investigator Kilgore, did the 9mm cartridge cases that were tethered to the case we just discussed on March 11, 2022, did they ever have any connection to the second APD case number, that whiteboard beneath you, 220750015?
Yes, there was an additional lead to that case number also.
And so, essentially, those two case numbers and the second one that we just discussed pertaining to the stipulation, 2830 Waters Road, shell casings collected, the 9mm cases from those two incidents matched one another per your system.
Yes, there was a potential NIBIN lead between the 3 of those.
And as you have discussed to this jury before, once you got the NIBIN computer system match, did you conduct your own review of those images?
Yes, once the matches come back on the computer system, we review the images. We look to see if we see enough similarities between them to send them to the GBI lab for confirmation. And at that point, we do a report saying we have a NIBIN lead on it and disseminate it to detectives.
And what was the day that this initial NIBIN lead came to your attention?
Our print off from the day that we got these leads was April 7th, 2022.
I need to stop y'all for just a minute.
Yes,
There's a juror that really needs to use the restroom.
Understood, Your Honor.
And I don't know who it is, but how much longer do we have with this witness?
I have one more question.
Okay. Can 2 more minutes, or is it a right now situation? Go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you.
And Investigator Kilgore, after you did that match, did you transport those 9mm shell casings to the GBI?
Yes, they go to the GBI after that for confirmation.
Thank you, sir. No further questions by the state.
All right. We'll break for lunch. Let's plan for y'all to be back at 1, please. Yeah. All right, see y'all back at 1.
Now in theaters.
Home Sweet Home.